All right, well, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I'd be here anyway, but I'm excited to be here specifically. I hope you are too. The week of prayer has been interesting so far, and I hope it will only continue as I do my best here tonight. And let's begin with a word of prayer. Please bow your heads. Dear God, thank you for this time we have tonight, that we're coming together and I have a chance to share some things that you have placed in my mind. And I pray that the Holy Spirit will be here to facilitate that communication, that the people here might understand, that I might also understand as you are speaking to me, and that we will learn, perhaps someone here will learn something about you tonight, and that we will all learn something about ourselves as well. We thank you for being with us and for guiding our minds. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Now, before we begin, can you all do me a favor? Close your eyes. Take a moment. I do mean all of you. In the interest of privacy, just to, you won't have to worry about what others are thinking about you, except of course me. I'm going to ask you a question. I'll give you a moment to think about it. Just on a scale of 1 to 10, a simple reduction of a complicated issue, but on a scale of 1 to 10, with 5, let's say, being the average person in the world, how would you rate your morality? Basis on which you made your choices. Are you a moral person? 1 to 10. Apart from religion, sorry?
How do you want us to vote?
Think about it. I want you to think about it first. 1 to 10. How moral are you? Apart from religion, apart from what other people make you do. Now, with your eyes closed, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Let's say, if you believe you're a 7. Any hands? Okay. You're 5. Any hands? Okay, how about 6? 8? And 9? 9, 10? Anyone? So, if you can look up now. Thank you for participating with me. A lot of you didn't raise your hand, so I don't know if you guys are less than 5. If so, you are. I appreciate your your honesty with yourself here. A lot of people, perhaps this indicates that we're in a religious setting. Most of us are interested in spirituality, are exposed to religious discussions, and perhaps also have a walk with God. And they say the more closer you get to Christ, the more you realize your inadequacies. It's very interesting that I would say most of you didn't raise your hands for any of the questions I asked, which means that I guess perhaps you think you're below average. I'm not there to make that call. The title of my message is Hide or Seek. And it is really about finding out the things in our lives that we often don't pay attention to. But the things that are perhaps might be apparent to other people, but we don't recognize them on our own. We are blind to them. The things that perhaps when other people point them out, we do not enjoy listening to them. The things that are vital to who we are and our interactions and for our spiritual future. There was a study done where they evaluated people's morals, and they asked them questions, and they had a way to measure how moral people thought they were. And CBS News summarizes it like this. The phenomenon known as illusory superiority is so stubbornly persistent that psychologists would be surprised if it didn't show up in their studies. said David Dunning, a psychologist at Cornell, who has studied the effect for decades. So what happens is people have a tendency to evaluate themselves higher than their peers think they are. So, this comes into play, especially when people are in positions of power. Perhaps people don't want to tell them the truth about them, about what they really think. And so people wind up with a vacuum of criticism, and they wind up tending to judge themselves better than they really are. But this doesn't only affect people in power, it affects all of us. We tend to have a functional opinion of ourselves, right? We tend not to be able to live with knowing that we are a problem, or we have persistent problems. We usually try to reconcile them in ourselves. Whether that means changing, or changing our beliefs and what we think about that particular subject. Key finding of another study, of over 270 subjects, they irrationally inflated their moral qualities. So not only do most people have feelings of moral superiority, but they're also unfounded. This is another study that corroborates the first. The second key finding was that self-enhanced feelings of superiority were not linked to high self-esteem as previously thought. So just because people thought they were better than other people, they didn't have true self-esteem. So they considered themselves superior, but this is what they told themselves. But it didn't really give them confidence. It didn't give them real strength. Now, having a realistic picture of yourself is difficult to achieve. Most of us probably don't, right? There's that gap in between what we believe that we are, how we view ourselves, and of course what we are, and then what other people see us as. And that gap is really self-awareness. How closely are you in tune with who you really are? Now, people have a lack of self-awareness, and it manifests itself in many different ways. I've been noticing this in the past few years, as I've been thinking about this topic, that a lot of people go through life and they do not really pay attention to what they are doing. They're perhaps, we kind of just autopilot through life, right? And our actions and our reactions are kind of a result of who we've developed to be, our character, our base instincts. And we don't really take the time to evaluate that. Now, there are a couple of manifestations of a lack of self-awareness that come to mind, and I'll be going over with you here tonight. Now, exculpation. Exculpation is a fun word. In English class, we do these vocab things where we find the most pretentious sounding words and decide to learn them. Exculpate was one of them. It's a verb, and it means to remove all guilt. It's often used that you exculpate yourself and you make yourself feel good, right? You take away the guilt and you justify yourself. And when we had this on the test, my mom loves to put these little, we call them contexts. And it's where she brings in the paragraph that uses the word, and we have to understand how the word is used. It's just about as annoying as it sounds. The context that was in this particular test was quite interesting. Quite interesting in my opinion. It's from the Futurist by Roger Howard. It says this: "This is when a moral pecking order eventuates. When one person feels guilty about something he or she has done, then it makes them feel less guilty to look down at someone else who they deem to be morally beneath them." I'm sure most of us have done this at some point in our life, right? It doesn't have to be morals, it could be anything really, right? We've messed up, and someone comforts us by saying, "Don't worry, this guy messed up worse. It's all good." Or we do something wrong, and we'll be like, "Well, there are people better than you, there are people worse than you." We compare ourselves to others, right? So we can remove the guilt, and we can justify ourselves. Now this is a pretty extreme example. Continues. "This is why in prisons, sex offenders in general, and child abusers in particular, are typically sectioned off for their own safety from their fellow inmates, who exculpate themselves by victimizing others." So we have people in prison broke the law, who knows what they did? They stole, they robbed. That's similar to stealing. That can be different. They're very particular about these things. They, let's say, they murdered. It's a good one. They're taking human life. They're doing bad things all the way around. But guess what they'll do? They'll look around and they'll find the sex offenders and they'll beat them up because that's gross. Come on, child abusers. Think about what has to be in their mind, right? They're worse than I am. I've only murdered a couple guys. I didn't rape them. Okay, I mean they're dead. They're dead. It's totally fine. These guys, they're worse. The people probably wish they had died. So what am I going to go beat them up? That's probably why I want to come through in the first place. I'm going to go beat them up so I can feel better about myself. Exculpation. In the Bible, there's a verse. Okay. This verse I didn't put there. Right here. I think I put it out of order. It's alright. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 6. If someone have a Bible, can you do me a favor of looking that up? It's on the screen here. Proverbs 20, verse 6. It's a fascinating verse. Mr. Anthony, go ahead.
Proverbs 20, verse 6, most men will proclaim everyone his own goodness, but a faithful man who can pardon.
Every man proclaims his own goodness. A faithful man who can find. Think on that. That's a good quote. The reason it's not there is because it's somewhere else in my talk, and I rearranged my notes. Excuse me. Think about that anyway. A faithful man who can find. Every man thinks on his own goodness. This applies to any context. No matter how bad we are, we try to find a way to explain how we might be good. There's a Bible story. Parable Jesus told in Luke chapter 18. And there's in this parable, there is a Pharisee and a publican. I'm sure you know the story well. Starts in verse 9. And he spake this parable to certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. So we have this similar tension here, right? People are feeling righteous and thus despising others because of it. Now, two men went up into the temple to pray, but one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust adulterers, or even this publican. So this Pharisee, he feels righteous because compared to the publican, right? Not compared to Jesus, right? Not compared to the standard that God has set. But compared to the publican, he looks holy. He appears to be a righteous man. And for these reasons, he's praising God, right? You could fill it in with people in the example. People in prison, thank God that I am not a rapist. And I'm only a murderer. Compared to the rapist, I'm so good. Thank you, Lord. But, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, you want to put this on, it's the same faulty reasoning. Now, Jesus, he was speaking this, as well as in the first verse, that were righteous and despised others. Now, we are in a Christian environment, right? Most of us are seeking a walk with God. Not all of us have a secure relationship. Most of us are seeking. And as we seek, we will see others around us that might be perhaps being bad influences on us, that might be perhaps bringing us down. But as we strive to stay steadfast and to draw closer to Christ, in all that we do, we must be sure never to despise those that are in the world. As we become more like Christ, we're not called to separate ourselves from the world in terms of, I provide such an extraordinary contrast to their hateful sins. No, that's not the goal. The goal is that as we are changed, they will see the contrast, right? We're not going to show them, we're not going to feel that way about them, but as they feel the contrast, they will be attracted to us. And they will not be attracted to us when we despise them. Second way that we hide sin. Now I call this justice v. mercy. Little story. I was in chemistry. I took chemistry class 2 years ago. I was in chemistry class, and I felt like it was a particularly murderous year. We had 6 original people. 4 of them were out like in no time, and Mr. Holland was giving us a treatment, and we struggled. It was very difficult. But one thing that made it difficult was not merely the material. And any of you who are in chemistry will understand material can be difficult, right? Concepts that are abstract, things that you thought you know nothing about. Your mind's being blown. Fires turning different colors. It's confusing. Now, Mr. Holland, but what made his class difficult beyond just the material was also certain things that the way the class was set up. Certain things about how the class was administered made it also difficult, in addition to the content. So, we had to learn our polyatomic ions. Polyatomic ions. Yeah, they're difficult. I remember one in particular, bromate. It spells bro. Anyway, the point is, bromates, it's polyatomic ions, it's only like 15 of them. We have to memorize them, and we're going to be quizzed. So it's a formula. It's one of those chemical formulas, BRO with numbers on the side and symbols, right? So
Supposed to know that, dude.
yeah, so we had to memorize 15 of these for a test. That would have been fun. It would have been ordinary assignment. Except we were introduced to them. I think it was a Tuesday. The test was a Wednesday. So we buckled down and we made flashcards, and we studied and we studied. And we cried out for mercy, and we studied more. And the test came the next day, and we took the test. I think, Reese and Jules were there at the time. We took the test. I think we survived, and we were like, "Ooh, we felt good." We had studied hard. We had done well. We had memorized a lot of difficult things. And I was like, "Whoa, Mr. Holland, he's tough, right? He's tough, Mr. Holland. The year goes by. Next year, this is a bigger chemistry class, more people in there. I learned that they got to the polyatomic ion section. And I was like, I have some flashcards, you can buy them from me. And I went to the test. Oh, in a week. They had, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they had a week to study. Okay? The point is, it was longer than what we had. Okay? It was way longer than what we had. I should have been, Mr. Holland, he's growing. He has a change of heart. He's going to give them more time. He understands that, sleep is important. I'm rejoicing in the Lord for these students.
It was a compliment to your intelligence.
Thank you. So, they're growing. Mr. Holland's being nice to them. I'm glad for them. It'll be easier this time around. Was I like that? No. I was like, how are they getting away? This is not fair, right? Something objectively unfavorable happened to me, and now they get the easy treatment? What is this, kindergarten? Like, what's going on? I was annoyed, right? But think about it. Was I looking out for their best interest? Would it affect me whether they took the test tomorrow or they took it in a week? It would have no bearing on me, my grades, or anything in the past. But I wanted them to have a test the next day. I was emotionally invested in Mr. Holland preparing a test. So, but I blame with justice and mercy. Most of us love both of these two things. We love mercy for ourselves, justice for others. I wanted mercy for Mr. Holland. I didn't care what happened last year. I wanted mercy for Mr. Holland, right, dude? But I wanted him to be fair and treat me the same as he treated the next class, right? I wanted them to go through the same hardship I went. I wasn't looking out for them. I was looking out for myself. I didn't really even think of it that way. Didn't even realize it. There's a story in the Bible of a guy who seems to disconnect different parts of his life in extraordinary fashion. This guy who was a servant, he was forgiven much. You know the parable, right? He goes to the king, and he's like, I cannot pay. Do not put my child and wife in slavery. And the king's like, slavery's cool. I'll be nice to you this time. Okay, so he lets him off the hook, right? And the guy goes off, and, 'cause the guy owed the king money, right? The guy goes off to someone else who owes him a little bit of money. Not nearly as much as he owed the king. And he goes, you must pay me now. And the guy's like, oh, please. I do not want my wife and my child to go to prison. And the guy's like, no, they're going to prison anyway. He sends them off to prison, right? And the king hears about this, and he's like, what? How? I just forgave this guy, How could he do this? How could he be so ruthless to his fellow servant? Now, I don't know about you, but God is quite merciful to us, isn't he? And as we deal with others, it is our duty to impart that mercy to them, right? Should we be, seeking, oh, please, God have mercy on me, and in the meantime, we are hard on others, right? We cannot allow them to fall. We cannot allow their faults to go unannounced, I should say. There's a third thing that I have come to realize in my ponderings. Self-awareness, that gap in between who you think you are and who you actually are. A lot of people think, I should just, focus on what I'm doing, right? I'm going to think about, do people like me right now? Am I being nice to people? Oh, how do they feel about me? What does he think? Is that what it's about? No. Self-focus versus self-awareness. Self-focus is when you think about yourself all the time, right? It's when you put yourself first. If you are constantly thinking about yourself when you're interacting with other people, will they enjoy it? No, they will not enjoy it, right? I'm sure you've all had instances where you're talking to someone, it could even be a friend, and they don't notice that you're not interested in what they're saying, like they're talking about something that really excites them, and it's really boring to you, right? And they just go on and on and on and on and on, right? They're thinking about themselves, right? They're thinking, this is interesting, this is cool, I'm excited, I'm going to share it, right? It's not bad, but they're not aware of how the other person in the exchange feels about that. Self-focus and self-awareness. When people are self-focused, they tend to set themselves as the standard. Now, this is problematic in terms of, you can see, sin in general, right? But even in our interpersonal relations, setting yourself as the standard. And I don't mean to say, this doesn't mean like, yes, I am perfect, I believe I am perfect, but we judge everyone else in comparison to ourselves. Short story about the person who made that test in the English class. Short, random, anonymous. Short story. This happened in English class sometime this year. It's used with permission. The student was saying, I'm really busy. I can't do this assignment. I'm sorry. It's gonna have to be late or something. Can I have mercy? And the teacher remarked saying, you might have been busy, but I was up till 11 o'clock last night preparing everything for today. And I'm sorry that you're busy, but guess what? I'm busier. Okay. Can anyone relate?
Amen.
So someone here is going through something difficult, right? But will I empathize with them? Will I recognize that what they're saying is valid? No, because I've gone through something worse. Listen, you have to get up to my level. Did you stay up to 12? Okay. You want to stay up to 11? Right? I stayed up to 11. You have nothing to complain about, right? We judge ourselves. We make everyone else our standard. someone's slow, someone's fast, based on what we are. They're faster than us. Oh, he's really fast. He's slower than us. Oh, he's slow. What's his problem? That's the way we judge ourselves and judge others around us. And the most dangerous thing in lacking self-awareness is that you can easily delude yourself. As you start to separate what you think you are from what you really are, you can convince yourself of almost anything if you go far enough. You know, my second story borrowed from my mom's life experience. She told me when she was younger, before I was born. She was young. She was young before I was born, and she was playing hide and seek with my nephews. You know, her nephews, my cousins. Excuse me. She's playing. I don't have nephews. So she was playing hide and seek with her nephews at my grandparents' house. They used to live in a beautiful place out in the country in Poconos, Pennsylvania, northeast. Recommended you should visit. They used to live there. She was visiting them with people of the family, playing hide and seek with the kids. The kids must have been like 10, around that age. Young. They're running around the house playing hide and seek. Now, my mom was not seeking; she was hiding, and so she found a good spot. You know, got tucked in. Was waiting in all the thrill and anticipation that accompanies a typical game of hide and seek. And my grandfather needed my mother, so he was calling Donna. That's not his accent. His Jersey accent. Can't do it. Donna. He's calling after my mom, and she was thinking, oh no, I'm hiding, right? If I answer him, I'm gonna give away my hiding spot, and I'm gonna lose the game. Losing is bad. So she was like, no, I'll stay silent. I'll stay silent. And he was going, he was looking for her. He started getting frustrated. He really needed her, and she wouldn't answer him. And he knew she was in the house. But she was like, it's a game, right? It's sacred, okay? Hide and seek is important. I can't give up I can't give up where I am. So she stayed silent, and eventually the game was over, of course, and my grandfather found her, and when she explained it, he agreed. He was enthralled. He was like, I understand completely. No, he was not. He was very angry. I don't know what happened. I don't know the situation. He was like, I really needed you. You weren't there. You were playing a stupid game of hide and seek, and whatever consequences followed because you could not, think past that and answer me because I really needed you. It wasn't just a casual thing. And my mom was like, she thought he's overreacting. He needs to calm down. I was playing a game. It's important. He needs to get his priorities in order. So, years passed, and, two little kids appeared, my sister and myself. And, we were at our own house. And my dad, I think, was involved. We were playing hide and seek in the house. Life goes, play hide and seek. So we were playing hide and seek, boy, sleepy Sunday afternoon. And my dad found a good hiding space. He tucked himself in, and, we were probably slow in finding him. So, my mom, she needed my dad. So, didn't have cell phones back then. Just called, like, Jean-Marie, Jean-Marie. He didn't answer, right? Playing a game of hide and seek. He knows the rules. He didn't answer. She was calling after him. Didn't answer. She was furious. She's like, what? Why didn't he answer me? She was mad, right? She really needed him, and he didn't answer. She really needed him. There were consequences. Sometimes. No, not in that way. Anyway, the point is, years down the line, my mom told me this story, and I thought, it's really interesting. You get put in situations, and from one side, you cannot empathize with the other. When she was the one who was hiding, she thought my grandfather was overreacting, right? But as soon as she was placed in his position, she realized that, she really needed him, and she felt the complete opposite. Now, in judging the situations, in the first situation, who was at fault? My grandfather, right? From my mom's point of view, my grandfather was at fault. Second situation, who's at fault? my father, right?
As usual.
Well, I won't make comment. So, who is the standard? She was the standard. As we navigate through life, we often take ourselves to be the standard. We evaluate everything based on ourselves. And this can breed that self-delusion. This is, judging others harshly while not seeing your own faults. This is perhaps, calling out someone else's errors while erring yourself in that moment. This is a quote from George W. Bush. Too often we judge other groups by their worst examples while judging ourselves by our best intentions. It's fascinating. Story of Saul. When Saul was king, he was commanded by Samuel to go kill the Amalekites, right? You know the story? Kill them all. Complete wipeout, right? No more, breathing things inside their kingdom. Saul decided that he could do something that was a little bit smarter than what he was told to do. And he said, it would be useful if we didn't kill certain people. Like the king, we'll keep him around and we'll keep some animals as well. Now Samuel hears of this, he's sent after Saul, and he confronts Saul. You realize what you're doing is wrong, right? And Saul says, yeah, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. So there's so many contradictions right there in that one phrase. He's utterly destroyed the Amalekites, but he saved the king. He has done what the Lord has told him to do, but then proceeds to discuss everything that he's done that the Lord didn't tell him to do, right? But he's saying, I've obeyed. He's lost some connection with reality here, right? He believes he has obeyed, but he clearly hasn't, right? Now, when our beliefs conflict with our behavior, we are forced to reconcile, right? We can either reconcile by changing our beliefs or changing our behavior. Changing our behavior is historically difficult. Often we wind up changing our beliefs without even noticing, sometimes suddenly. We change our beliefs so that they harmonize with our behavior. In conclusion, Proverbs 20, verse 6. Most men will proclaim everyone his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find? I think if we've learned anything, if I've learned anything, is that there's a lot of sin that goes on that we don't notice. Of course, the things that we know we shouldn't do and we do, but there are things that just slip under the radar constantly. Whether it's due to lack of self-awareness, or whether it's due to, extenuating circumstances, we often have sin in our lives that we don't outright notice. But yet we can proclaim our own goodness at the same time. Matthew 19:17 says, this is the story of the rich ruler, by the way. He approaches Jesus, and he calls him good master, good Lord. He says something like that, and Jesus responds, why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. If we look at this, we realize that this is why none of us are good, right? We can do our best, we can check off all the lists, but none of us are good except God. Laodicean church, one of their biggest problems was this exact thing, right? It says, I am rich, increased with goods, and need nothing, but you don't know that you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. The heart is deceitful above all things. Who can know it? In sanctuary class, most of you are in that or have been through it. We talk about the Day of Atonement, right? We talk about searching our hearts, searching our souls, seeing those things, I'm going to sanctuary 12, seeing those things, right, that are incompatible with the presence of God. This is why we must afflict our souls. This is why we must search our hearts. Because are these things readily obvious sometimes? No. they can be so deeply hidden. James says, "For if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man beholding his natural face in the glass. For he beholdeth himself and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed." See, the law, the word of God, provides a mirror, right? We don't see ourselves as we truly are. This is how we can see what we really are. That's the purpose of the law. It's the purpose of the Bible. Proverbs 28:13. It's a sort of promise. Whosoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. The word of God, that sword that pierces the heart and can remove those things that perhaps are hidden even to us. Once we allow this to happen, we will obtain mercy. I invite you to perhaps go from here and, if you take anything away, try to be more aware. Try to be more aware, but is that enough? Go to the Word of God and invite Him to reveal to you the secret things that you perhaps may be sinning, or maybe transgressing and hurting those around you, and hurting yourself, hurting your relationships. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Dear God, we know that you love us the way we are, but you do want to change us. You want to transform us. And we pray that though there are so many things that we don't even notice in ourselves, we are so incapable of even recognizing who we really are, our true selves. We pray that as you guide us and help us to see who we are, we will rely on you more and more. And that our relationships and all that we do, all our interactions, will be that much improved as we understand the truth, we understand who we are, and as we start that process of change. Because truly, we cannot change unless we know who we are. Unless we realize what condition we're in, there is no hope of progress. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.